Okay, so my images have finished exporting from Lightroom, and I have the folder brought up where they originally were. These are all my raw files in here, and then you'll see it made that folder in here called Final. So I'm going to click into that, and here are all our nicely renamed files. Now there's a couple just small asides I want to talk about. As I'm going through these images, depending on how many images it is, I have a couple methods of attack for figuring out what images need additional work. If I'm just doing a regular session, or you're taking pictures in the park in the afternoon or for some family members, and you only have 40, 50 images that you called down to, you might maybe want to look at my method, but one method I want to bring up is flagging images. Excuse me, not flagging, color labeling. And I do use this method when I'm editing a large number of files. So, vacations, weddings, whatever. If I have a large number of files and I don't want to go through every single one of them after exporting to determine if there's any additional work that needs done, then this is the method I use. So in Lightroom, and this is something I would do either as I was culling or as I was editing, but if you're going through, and what's a good example here? Okay, like this one. I had mentioned that this is one I knew I wanted to do some extra work to, something artistic. So what I can do is, and this is really just for my purposes, is you can stick a color label on it. So we'll set it to purple. Go through this one. This is one I talked about. I want to see if I can kind of save that one. Purple. This one, I need to take that trash can out. Purple. This one, this is that one I talked about. I really want to enhance her eyes. Purple. And I know there's another one. This girl in particular, she mentioned to me, as well as her mom did, and this is kind of a common thing, when she smiles really big, she has a vein that kind of protrudes from her forehead, and that was something that she mentioned to me she didn't really want to see. So this was one of those images where she had a big cheesy smile on her face, and I could see that vein, so I'm going to flag that one because it's one that I need to fix. So the sole reason of doing that is really just to tell me as a reminder of what images I need to work on. So if I'm not sitting down and doing this all in one go, I can easily see which purple ones I had flagged after they're exported, find them as JPEGs, and know that those are ones I have to work on. And that's another sort feature in here. You can sort by label color, so it'll take your purples to the top, and then you can easily see what ones you want to work on. Like I said, I only use this method with a huge number of images, but you can use the color coding system for anything you want. It's really just a personal cataloging system. I know some people use it for, they'll use one color for ones they know they're going to turn into black and white, or they'll use one color for they know they have to remove something from it, another color for some other fix, for head swaps, etc. So just so you know that that is kind of a feature or function of Lightroom. It's kind of handy. So but what I do when I have 50-ish or less images is I will bring them all into Photoshop one at a time, because in most cases I smooth the skin in most images. I'll do any kind of touch-ups. That's stuff that I just do anyways, and almost all the images need a little something done. So I'm not going to do that here, but I just want to kind of let you know my process of what I do. So let's bring a couple of these in. So this was one. So this was one of the ones that I had mentioned. We really kind of cropped it in close, but I loved the expression on her face. Okay, So by cropping it in close, we did lose a lot of quality. So I would sharpen this image and more than likely turn it into black and white. But let's see. There's that garbage can one. Here it is. So I'm going to bring this in, and I'm going to use my clone tool to get rid of that garbage can in the background. So here's our clone tool. I'm going to go just a little bit bigger on this. I'm happy with that. 100% opacity, because I just want to get rid of this thing in one swipe. The blurry's all, or excuse me, the background's all nice and blurry, so it should blend just fine. So I'm going to hold down Alt to select my target area, and then just going to paint that thing away. There we go, easy enough. Alright, so happy with that. I'll save it at 10. I don't know if you remember, I had talked about this image quality, and after speaking with some professionals, there we go, after speaking with some professionals, they said that there's really no difference between 10 and 12. I know that there are reasons that you would save it at 12, and that maybe if you're dealing with like 3D objects or something like that, something beyond the scope of regular photography. But 10 is a very high quality, and it will save you a little bit of hard drive space. So you don't need those extra 2 points of quality. You will not notice any kind of difference. So usually save at 10, and it will stay that way unless you save at a different value for some reason. Okay, and I'm going to close it. So let's go to that one that this one where we needed to fix her forehead. Alright, so I'm going to use my zoom tool, and I'm going to zoom in, and yeah, you can see it right there. It almost just looks like a shadow. So I'm going to use my clone brush. I'm going to go down. That may be, well, we'll try that. And I'm going to drop my opacity down. Anytime I'm working with skin, I'm never at 100% opacity, because even though, you know, it's all one skin tone, under different lighting conditions, I mean, this color is vastly different from this color just an inch away, and from this color just an inch away. It's very, very difficult to blend skin in certain areas, so I like a very transparent, or a little more on the transparent side as far as my brush opacity goes, and I'd rather go over something repeatedly and have it blend a little bit better. So I'm going to select this over here, kind of go over it, and then I'll probably select a darker area over here, go over it, and kind of switch sides, target each side. That looks pretty good. And I always like to zoom out. You can double click the hand tool and it'll zoom you out just to see. And one of my absolute favorite things to do is open my history palette and go to where I started. I just like seeing the before and after. Okay, it tells me where I'm at, and if I missed anything, if it looks good. And I'm happy with that. That looks good. So I'm going to save. Great. Okay, and that's what I would use Photoshop for first off, is I would go in and fix kind of any little things that needed to be done. Blemishes, skin smoothing. I'm going to do skin smoothing in a separate video. Brightening eyes, all that fun stuff. I would go in and do that. And then the next thing that I usually do is I do my black and whites. So I always do a selection of images, even if it's just a day at the park. I always do some images in black and white because I really, really like black and white. So depending on how many I'm doing, we'll just snag a few here. I'm holding down Control to pick the ones that I want to work with. Let's see. I always like the ones where they're looking away. For some reason, I really like those in black and white. Or looking down. Although that one I think is gorgeous in color. And I have 7, that's good. So I'm going to bring all 7 of these into Photoshop. And this is where I'm going to run an action. So I don't want to take the time to convert all of these into black and white, or sometimes, especially if I'm doing personal pictures like of my kids, if we went and did something fun, I may turn, you know, that whole outing into black and white, and I certainly do not want to go in and do however you want to approach doing black and white, whether you're using that black and white function here, or, you know, you're going to, or was it image adjustments, desaturate, which I told you is kind of a no-no. I want it automated. I want to be able to hit play and let it go, and that's where those actions come into play. So I have mine already set up, so I'm going to go to File, Automate, Batch, and then I'm going to find where I have that specific action. Yeah, I kind of have a ton. Okay, here, and I want to run this action on the files that I have open, and I'm going to hit OK. And the way that I have this action set up is no matter where I'm running the images from, it doesn't matter if they're on a thumb drive, if they're on my desktop, if they're on you know, a different external drive, when this action is run on them, it saves them all in a central location, so that I don't have to go in and change the action every time to tell it to save somewhere. It just saves all of them into one central location, and then when this is done running, I just move those files over. So while that's kind of doing its thing, I'm going to bring up, so here's that final folder with our edited images in it, and I'm going to create a new folder in here. And for me, I always call it proofs, but you know, it's not really a layman's person's term, so you may want to call that final, or effects, or whatever naming system works for you. And I know that this is where I'm going to put all of my images that I've done anything outside of normal color correction, skin correction, that kind of thing. That's where I'm going to put that stuff, because I never want to overwrite an image. You know, if I did one in black and white, I need to save that original image. I don't want to go back to Lightroom and re-export and have a color version. I always want to have just my plain color images, even the ones that I know I'm going to do, like, they don't look great by themselves because I knew I was going to do something special with them. I still always want to retain that original image. It's just kind of my thing. So now I'm going to go to the location of where my black and whites, where I know that those go to. And see, this is my folder. I have it, it's on a root drive. I just have it named PS Actions for Photoshop Actions, and these are my most frequently run actions. So these are ones that I often run a lot, and so when they're done running in Photoshop, they all get dumped in these folders. So I'm going to click black and white, and lo and behold, you can see they're done processing back here in the background. Here they all are here. So I'm going to copy all these. And now one thing to note, I'm pretty sure this is the same in Mac as it is in Windows. If you click and drag something to someplace else, if you were working on the same hard drive, meaning these files here, this location here is on your C drive, for instance, and this location that you're moving them to is in your C drive. You don't have to hold anything down. If you click, hold, and drop it into your folder or wherever, it's going to move them automatically. If you are trying to do that same process on two different drives, so say I have several external hard drives hooked up, and say that I had these on my regular C drive, but I had all my actions dumped on one of my external drives. If you do that same motion, click, hold down, and drag it over, it's going to copy them rather than move them. So anytime you click and hold anything down, it will show you, see it says move to proofs and it has that little arrow. You can hold down your different function keys like your shift, control, alt, and it will give you, mind you, while you're holding your mouse key down, and it will give you different options. So if I hold control for Windows, it will make a copy of them instead of moving them. If I hold alt, it will create a link. And a link, it's not a copy, it just is kind of a directory. So you can make shortcuts are good for, or links, they used to be called shortcuts. Like anything down here, you have programs down here in your bar, those are all shortcuts. Like those programs don't actually live down there, they're just kind of shortcuts for you to click, and the computer will open where that file is actually located. So just so you know, that's a thing. So I'm going to move those over. Great, they're moved. So the next thing I'm going to do is I have a few favorite actions, just kind of like stylized actions that I really like. I like the colors that they produce, so I'm just going to pick a few. Let's see, there's one of those water ones. Oh, wait, I know. Where'd it go? This one? Let's try it on 3. Oh, that was the one. Any more? No, that's good. Okay, so I'm going to drag these 3 in. And I'm going to do that same process of batch running an action. Automate, batch. And this time I'm going to run one, it's called Dusk. It's one of my favorites. I'm going to run it on open on the files that are open. Click OK. With this particular action, I sometimes, oh, what is this? Hold on, something funky is going on here. That's weird. This is one of the actions that I don't automatically have save to a different location because sometimes I have to go in and do extra work to it. I had to stop that process for some reason, so I'm just going to run it manually on each one. So when it batch automates, it'll run the action on each of them and it'll just leave them all open. And this one, it's kind of neat to just watch it run, go through all the different steps. Okay, and really, it did a really good job on all of these. I don't really see anything that I need to fix. I might make a darker vignette around here just to focus more on her. But for the most part, I'm looking at these and they look pretty good. So I always like turning my layers on and off so I can see. Like it looked good as a color image, but when you add some colorization and vignette around it, it just really brings it to life. So I'm going to save as on these images because I don't want to save over the original. And I'm going to drop it right into that same proofs folder. Now, my black and white should be there, but they're not, and here's why. Because I have layers going on, I didn't flatten this image. It's trying to save it as a Photoshop file, so I'm going to override that JPEG. Oh, there's those black and whites. Great. Save. It's going to bring up that dialog box to save, and it's going to merge. This action has a ton of layers, so it always takes a minute. And it takes a minute to save, too. And it's kind of nice, it tells you how long you have to go. I can actually jump over to this one while that one's still working. I think it's actually a little bit faster if you flatten, layer, and then flatten image, and then it kind of compacts all of this into one layer. And it seems like that takes less time than saving it and letting it merge while it saves. Save. Okay. Great. And oh yeah, let's go ahead and flatten this. File, save as, proofs, save. Okay. And close. Okay, so the last thing that I would do is I would go in and these couple of extras that I knew I was going to do something special with, I would go in and work on those. That's kind of beyond the scope of what I'm going to do with you guys, but the next step that I would do is I would select all of these images, I'd hold down Control and deselect the proofs, and then I'd move them into that proofs folder, and then kind of come up with a thing here. This destination has 10 files with the same names. Of course it does, because those are comprised of the black and whites and those 3 that I ran that color action on that are inside the folder, but then you have the originals outside. So it's asking, do you want to replace the ones in the proofs folder with these? No, I want to skip them. So by skipping them, it's moved everything over that I wanted to leave in plain black and white. Here's my originals, so these are all the ones that I either turned into black and white or ran that action on. And then within my proofs folder, look at that. I have my colors, my black and whites. I have those couple that I did that need effect to. And with that, I would call it a day. So if I was going to post them on Facebook or anything like that, I would do a resizing action. Because Facebook does some funny things when it compresses. If you try to upload an image to Facebook and it's huge, it'll use its own algorithm to compress it. But it doesn't always do a good job, and so sometimes they're a little bit fuzzy or the quality is just really degraded. But I usually run my own action. You can search in Facebook and it'll tell you what the preferred dimensions are, but I usually run my own action and do it that way to resize them. But otherwise that's kind of it. I would call it a day and be done with it. So that's kind of my simple process from Lightroom to Photoshop. So Lightroom is always my first stop. That's where I do all of my global edits, meaning my edits that aren't localized. They aren't going in and doing fine adjustments, fine tuning, kind of doing color correction, exposure correction, all that fun stuff, just to make it into a good color image. And then from there, I'm taking select ones into Photoshop, or I think I also mentioned I actually use an action that I do on all of my images that just does like a sharpening and a kind of a color pop that I've found works really well with all of my images. So that's kind of a step that I left out, but most people don't have that step in their workflow, and it's certainly just fine to just bring in and do your little black and whites or whatever extra edits you're going to do. And then I really like to have everything in one place, and then my originals in a different place. And then as far as my raw files go, I usually hang on to those for a little while. If it's something like I took the kids trick-or-treating and took a few candids, once I edit them, I'll delete the raw files pretty much right away. But if it's like, my daughter's 1-year portraits, I'll usually hang on to those for a while and make sure that down the road I'll look at them again. I'm like, did I screw these up? Did I do an okay job? Do I need to redo them? Because those are a lot more important to me. And then I'll get rid of them. For business purposes, I usually hang on to images for a couple years. At least that's what I have in my contracts, but I have images that are 10 years old. So that's kind of my spiel on that. So I'll catch you at the next video.